At 5:30 in the morning on March 6, 1836, 1,800 men held their breath and had entered a waking nightmare. For hours they had advanced in the dark, no smoking, no talking, their hearts hammered against their ribs. Their objective was silence, the element of surprise retribution. Then one lone bugle tore the morning apart. What came next was the most lethal minute of the entire siege of the Alamo, not due to Texan gunfire, but from disastrous errors no living soul could bear to recount. This evening we reveal the savage reality of the assault that sentenced hundreds to death, told by those who climbed the gore-smeared walls and survived to tell its secrets. This is the tale the movies never showed, the 60 seconds that reshaped a nation. From the initial hour on the 6 days break, the units were awakened. By 3 o'clock, they advanced without a sound toward the water, moving in pairs across narrow wooden bridges. Obstacles were avoided to approach the foe unseen, pausing at the officers' chosen post to wait, gripping their arms for fate's hour. Quiet was again enforced, the solace of tobacco forbidden. The moon hung overhead, yet was veiled by dense clouds that threw but a weak shimmer on our ranks, a luck that served our aim. This pallid light, the stillness broken only by muffled words, the cold air of daybreak, the eerie calm that made hours feel like moments, and the looming threat facing us, all weighed down upon our spirits. We spoke in low tones, still among the living. Soon, many in our number would be beyond speech, return to the void from which we all emerge. Others, wounded and moaning, would lie forsaken for hours, each dreading the whistle of a shell that might mercifully end their suffering. Yet, anticipation set our blood racing. Soon this terrible waiting would cease. The offense against our army, the spilled blood of brothers slain months prior inside those very walls, would be avenged. The horizon glowed, dawn's gilded veil began to rise. A prearranged bugle's cry to arms shattered the gloom. Then came that awful messenger of devastation, vibrating through our very beings, stealing the look from our faces, tearing us from somber thought. Exhausted from a night awake, I had just closed my eyes when this lethal note split the sky. Jose Maria Gonzalez, an engineer's bugler, sounded the call that readied us to scorn life and seize our end. An instant later, dread was conquered by honor's clarion cry. The units charged ahead with greatest haste. They had barely moved when commands were yelled to shoot, too soon for the muskets to find their mark. But prudent officers ignored the reckless order. Alerted by our signal, echoed down the lines, the enemy returned fire with fury, though our shots fell short, halting our charge. Travis, compensating for lack of numbers, had allocated 3 guns to every man. Their first discharge was swift and deadly. Our lines left a crimson trail of injured, dying, and dead. Squads massed near the commanding officer sounded the assault. With passion ignited, we return that cry which sets the spirit ablaze and chills the enemy's heart. The following battalion, overcome by zeal, erupted in shouts for the Republic and President General. A frenzy commanders could not contain, paid for in blood. Distracted by these shouts, the enemy, as daylight revealed the terrain, redoubled their fire on the advancing troops. A single cannon shot eradicated nearly all the Toluca riflemen, just steps into their charge. Captain Jose Maria Herrera, leading the Toluca force, fell soon after. Lieutenant Vences was also struck down. Another volley ripped through the vanguard, and among them was Colonel Duke, his thigh pierced clean through. To the shock of all, one of the colonel's aides remained standing, darting to his side, while the other's fate remains lost to history. Fortune spared this rider, though Captain Don Jose Maria Macotella of Toluca suffered mortal wounds, succumbing not long after. The attack strategy had been communicated, yet vital tools were forgotten. The columns were instructed to bring pickaxes, hatchets, and scaling ladders, but only at the final moment was it clear these items were missing. The ladders were flawed and scarce. Through the storm of grape and ball, the units pressed courageously forward to the base of the wall, except for the third, mauled on its side by a 3-cannon battery on a raised platform, which carved terrible gaps in its ranks. Attacked directly from the heights, it veered toward the north wall's corner, searching for respite from the slaughter. The inadequate ladders we bore never arrived, their carriers slain or dispersed. Only one single ladder of those promised ever appeared. General Koss, desperate for progress, drove his men directly to where the second and third columns now merged into a chaotic crowd. Luckily, this section's front was made of wood, its trench barely dug, the wall nearly 9 feet high. Here, at last, a foothold scalable though with great effort, yet mayhem reigned. Commanders of every rank shouted commands lost in the din. The most courageous soldiers scrambled to be first atop the wall, roaring for room, trampling comrades in their fervor. Others, stuck in the press, flailed uselessly, hindering the nimble, pulling down those poised to ascend. A devastating hail of shot from the barracks roof and adjacent posts reaped lives, intensifying the chaos of our shattered lines. The foremost climbers were hurled down by bayonets fixed behind the parapet or pistols fired at point-blank range. Yet our troops' resolve did not break. Watching allies fall, they climbed over gore-soaked corpses to assume their place, eager to exact vengeance. Gunfire, the whiz of rounds, the groans of the wounded, furious oaths, death rattles, officers roared orders, war's cacophony, and the frantic shouts of those scaling the walls merged into a madness that drowned all thought. The defenders yelled just as fiercely, their strange languages shrieking frantic alerts that grated on our ears. From his vantage, General Santa Anna witnessed this horrific spectacle. Mistaking the third column's struggle to find a breach for a full retreat, he feared a rout. Therefore, he commanded Colonel Ammett to hurl the final reserves into the fray. The engineer battalion, already pushing forward, joined the ascent. Even the general's own staff were ordered to charge, a brave but futile addition that multiplied the confusion and carnage where it was not needed. Before the engineers gained the wall's base under a rain of bullets and shell, half their leaders were wounded. Among them, young Torres died inside the compound, clutching a captured flag, cut down at his moment of triumph, silent and magnificent, mourned by his comrades. A curious destiny marked this battalion. 4 officers and 21 soldiers fell, yet not a single sergeant, though their number often exceeds the former. 15 minutes passed. Our men stuck in hell's core, climbing futilely toward a death less dishonorable than being smothered in the crowd. Finally, enough breached the wall. Order abandoned. The garrison, gripped by terror, retreated into barracks flanking their inner courtyard. Gates barred, yet their own hastily made trenches now ensnared them. Not all fled. Some stood their ground, glaring at our audacity before firing. Travis himself never wavered in his resolve, only in his pace stopping to turn his defiant countenance toward us, aiming his shots with cold precision. He fought like a soldier of worth. His death came finally, but only after he had extracted a bloody toll. No man among his followers met their end with more noble defiance, and meet it they all did. Travis behaved with heroism. Justice compels this acknowledgment. With a ragged band of green recruits, scant supplies, and contrary to his junior officers' counsel, he held against seasoned veterans who vastly outnumbered him. He was a fair-haired figure, his solid build matched by a resolute spirit. Meanwhile, Colonel Morelos and his riflemen, their duties completed, stood just yards away. Fearing our shots might strike them, they crouched in captured pits, harrying the foe without endangering our men. Happily, the converging units compressed the front, sparing us from greater self-inflicted harm. Yet even then, some fell to the muskets of their own comrades. Grave was the wound, but bitterer still was the death. Our men carried excessive ammunition, reserve cartridges, and elite companies, each man weighed down with 7 rounds. This excess was likely meant to discourage reliance on the bayonet, the steel that is the stormer's genuine arm, while riflemen offered supporting fire for the assault. But mistakes thrive in such instance, far beyond any remedy. Regret alone comforts those at fault, and those at fault were many. Soldiers, some brave, some crazed, broke into the enemy's barricaded rooms met by hellish volleys. Others, blinded by rage and smoke, fired wildly through openings, killing friend and foe without distinction. Thus our losses swelled dreadfully, yet they turned captured cannon on the chambers, blowing doors and walls to splinters. Carnage held sway. Men were crushed underfoot. Madness held dominion. The very spirits of vengeance seemed loosed among us. Mobs of troops unleashed shots in all directions, at companions, at commanders, making death as likely from a comrade as the enemy. Through the din, orders were shouted uselessly, drowned by the roaring chaos. Let no one believe this account an exaggeration. Those who were there will attest to its truth. To soften its telling would be a falsehood. In 60 seconds, the breach transformed into an abattoir. But the genuine terror wasn't Travis' stand or even the walls slick with blood. It was the event that followed. As gun smoke filled the courtyard, Mexican troops did the unimaginable. They fired at point-blank range into their own brothers, not from confusion, but on command. 75% of the casualties were felled by their own side. The Alamo wasn't merely won that morning. It was submerged in fratricidal fire. Why bury this reality? Why permit Hollywood to depict this as a valiant charge? Because Santa Anna could not confess. His glorious triumph was a brother-killing horror. The true breach wasn't in the fortress walls. It was in the deceit. Tonight, you have heard the testimony they attempted to suppress. So I put it to you. Was Travis the final man to die, or the initial casualty of a conspiracy? Comment below with what you think truly condemned those hundreds.